Hi, my name is Meredith Williams, and today we will be talking about the history of Halloween. So, have you ever wondered why children run around in different costumes from door to door asking for candy on October 31st? Well, this actually has to do with the Celtic rituals that started 2,000 years ago. So, today we're going to talk about those Celtic spirits and rituals that were created. We'll talk about the history of the jack o' lantern, and then we'll talk about how these traditions connect to the celebrations that we have today. I've studied this online and have four credible sources at the bottom of my paper that I have turned in APA style, and I am excited to share the things that I've learned. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the Celtics. So, the Celtics created these festivals for the spirits. It was on November 1st, and this first celebration was called Samhain. It was created on November 1st because that was the last day that they would harvest their summer crops, and they believed that this was the start of the cold season and the winter. They thought that this change in the weather made it to where evil spirits, good spirits, all of the dead people could come back to Earth. So they tried to woo them and make them happy. They thought that if they had happy spirits, they would have good crops. So the priest would create really big bonfires where all of the people would come and gather, and they'd tell fortunes of the year to come. They'd be dressed up in different skins of the animals that they'd hunted, and they'd have food and dance and try to entice these spirits into a good harvest. So Pope Gregory II decided to change the celebration of Samhain in 690 AD. He made the celebration from May 13th to November 1st instead of just the day of November 1st. He wanted to include all Christian martyrs in this celebration. And so this was called All Saints' Day, and this All Saints' Day was celebrated mostly by the Catholic officials and the people of the Catholic faith, but it's now a respected holiday of most Christians, and they still celebrate this on November 1st. But considering that a lot of people started their celebrations the night before, which was All Hallows Eve, and then it later became Halloween. So the second thing I want to talk about is the history of jack-o'-lanterns. Jack-o'-lanterns were first used by people in Ireland. It was a lamp to keep jack-o'-lantern away from their family. So today we use pumpkins, but originally the carvings were in gourds. There were the hollowed out gourds that they found around them because the potato famine had left them with not enough food, and these gourds had been hollowed out, all of the food had been taken, so they could carve them and they could light them. So many Irish immigrants came into America because of that famine, and that's when they brought in this new tradition. So Jack from the jack-o'-lantern name was a man who apparently had to escape the devil. He didn't want to go to hell, but the devil wouldn't let him go to heaven, so he trapped him in a second realm where he would be taunted and tortured for the rest of his existence. And he became known as a vengeful person of the Irish people who would haunt them. And the families believed that if they left him a lantern outside their house, which they made out of these gourds, then they would pass his house and he would keep going on his way trying to find other people. And that's how we still have the jack-o'-lanterns today that we have that are the pumpkins instead of the gourds, because pumpkins are something that America had more of and that was able to use and was used in more cooking than the gourds were. Now that we've talked about All Saints' Day and then we talked about the history of the jack-o'-lantern, I'd like to talk about our present Halloween traditions. So several traditions that we have today are shared with other countries and come from these original celebrations. One thing is the costumes. Costumes were created to hide someone from the evils of the night that could be found on All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Eve. And they wanted to cloak them, hide them, cover them. Celtic people used their animal skins. and they wanted to protect them from the deadly spirits that they believed could come and curse their crops. They believed that most of the spirits that had passed through were evil and not good people that were going to help them. And then the Catholic faith brought a lot of British people from Europe who started wearing costumes as a way to make some extra money on All Hallows Eve that they could use for the celebrations of the next day, whether it was food or decorations or anything like that. They would make elaborate costumes to get some money off the streets that they could use for the next day. Then candy and other sweet treats were brought into the celebrations whenever people started coming to America from Ireland and from Britain. So originally, the people would walk around with their families. It wasn't just the kids. And they'd go door to door asking for blessings, asking for good tidings and prayers from the people. And in return, they would sing songs. They would give their own prayers. Sometimes they would have food that they would give or clothing that they had made and would give to the family of the home they were at as a thank you. But as we got older, as the world progressed differently, people started to exchange baked goods more. They would have little trinkets, and it became candy and suckers and that kind of thing that we have now. And once it had moved on a little bit more and it was on a larger scale. So we've talked about 3 points. We talked about the traditional All Saints Day. We talked about jack-o'-lanterns. We talked about Halloween in the present and how the night we celebrate with crazy costumes and candy was initially celebrated to welcome the evil spirits into the earth and persuade them to let the crops be good in the Celtic Circle. So I would like to leave you with this fall as you're going to find a costume for Halloween. Make sure you make it scary. You don't want some Celtic spirits taking your candy.